to Pat, and Pat said to me the other week that he was keen to do one on man management, and I think that we've put quite a bit of effort into man management in the past, and I think if you step back far enough from your game, I'd go as far to say that 80 to 90% of your game will depend on how you man manage versus whether you know the law or not. If you can man manage, you don't necessarily need to know all the law, and I don't recommend that, but you can get away with a good game of rugby. So I think it's really, really important that I jumped at the opportunity for Pat to give us a session on man management from his perspective and his experiences. Yeah. So
just looking at this, the guys that should be here really pissed off because they're not here. 90% of our referees need to take on board what Pat to give us. And when you have a look around the room, the guys that should be here, normal, they don't turn up.
I think if you look at your games where you've had problems, I think if we're honest with ourselves, it's our inability to manage the situation that causes the problem more than anything. If you can manage the situation well, you'll get out of jail, basically. So Pat, all yours. Thanks.
You got two choices. You can sit in here and watch me live, or you can go out there and watch me on telly. No, you're okay. Couple of questions for you. Put your hands up if you've refereed a game where the penalty count blew out beyond 25, but you didn't notice it. Or you've come off the field and felt like you had an opportunity to escalate your sanctions, but you missed it. So who's had to deal with really bad or poor captains? So tonight I've got an offer for you, 5 simple strategies to reduce your penalty count to under 20 without compromising your credibility or standards, to cope with and deal with difficult captains without sacking them from the role, and I've had to do that twice, and to minimise sideline abuse. Who wants to hear about them? Okay, so tonight's talk is titled My Top 5 Ways to Build Strong Relationships with Key Personnel. These are the same 5 steps that I use regardless of whether or not I'm refereeing my son's under 12 side or I'm refereeing a Premier Grade side. And those strategies are: I'm going to show you how to make a great first impression, how to build rapport and credibility, how to establish yourself as the expert, how to identify behaviours that you need to change, then how to create and implement your change behaviour plan. So, we got any salesmen in the room? What do you sell? Insurance. Got any luxury car sales people? Anybody who's, okay, at the other side of the coin, is there anybody who sells a product that would sell regardless of whether it was 10 cents or $2,000, like Coke?
Money.
Okay. Right. Good one. Tonight's talk, excuse me, tonight's presentation was all about being a salesman. So, to make a great first impression, you have got about 1.5 seconds. So it'll all come down to what you say in the first 10 seconds of your meeting, the first 10 steps you take towards the person that you're meeting, and the first 10 words that you say. It really is that crucial. If you get it wrong, you could spend the next 3, 4, 5 months recovering your great first impression. So as a referee, are you a salesperson? Who in the room believes that they're not a salesperson when they're refereeing? So we're all on the right page. Why do we think we're salespeople as referees?
Oh, instead of sales, it means sell decisions.
Yeah. Who are we selling our decisions to?
Players.
And?
Spectators.
Spectators. Everybody. So the question is, are you doing a good job at it? How do you know you're doing a good job at selling your decisions?
Lack of back chat.
Yep.
The feedback you get from
Not so many penalties.
Players are scared.
Players get on with it. Crowds come up and congratulate you, even though their team lost. All these sorts of things are good evidence to suggest that you're selling yourself as a salesperson and a good referee. So we get one opportunity to make a great first impression. And funnily enough, if you get this right, there's 90% of the equation gone. And this is what I teach in associate referees courses to all of those guys who come along to do associate referees courses. The whole line of this year's associate referees program has to be to transition them from a daggy looking dad to a professional looking referee. So what do you think I'm teaching them to transition them from a daggy looking dad to a professional referee? What do you think I teach them? Who has been out and watched associate referees run around? So what are the things that you see that gives you the clear impression they're a daggy looking dad? Clothing, appearance. What's the two things that we harp on about in referees? That presentation, whistles, signal, talk. So what do you think I teach associate referees? Whistles, signal, talk, clothing. If you see somebody refereeing as an associate referee wearing gumboots or jeans, I want to know their names. They've all been told gumboots and jeans are out. In fact, I've even told them that if I catch them wearing gumboots and jeans, I'll walk into the middle of the field and kick them off. They've been told. So, how does the pre-match talk work for you guys?
Don't say too much.
Yeah.
Some of them ask questions afterwards about what you're clear on
Yeah.
as well. So you clarify at that.
Pretty much. What's up there? Nothing else?
First one I introduced myself to was the coach.
Yes.
I usually walk over and introduce myself to the coach and organise a flag from the flag.
Yeah.
And then I ask for your captain and introduce myself to the captain. So I probably know the coach captain.
I often don't talk to the coach at all.
I talk to the coach and I say what's on questions.
But I think there's one more thing before that, and it's the timing before the match.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, you get to the referees that come late, and that's how they referee in a rush.
There's nothing worse than being rushed to be a team talk because you get stuck in traffic.
One thing I was going to say is that sometimes setting the expectation. I carefully there's been a couple of Fridays ago in photos where I set the expectation and taking the picture just to set that scene, especially a young role.
Do you find you might end up painting yourself into a corner though?
Yeah.
Maybe if you put a link in, that's going to be one of those games.
And now aren't you preempting the result? So we're given lawful authority now in our law book that we must talk to the front row. So I would suggest that we try and minimise our talk to exactly what we're allowed to talk to them about, which is how the scrum engagement is going to go. But this is the start of a relationship building process that you need to go through. Again, we talk about all this stuff. We're going to tell them about the crouch, bind, set, blah, 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 where the halfback's going to stand, how he's going to feed, etc., etc. This is where you become the salesman. When we get buy-in from our people that we're talking to, what are we doing? What's the transaction? What's the nature of the transaction? What are they using to purchase the buy-in?
What we've just said to them.
Yep, we're giving them something. What are we giving them? We're giving the method in which we're going to run the scrums.
Yeah.
Remember, when you buy something, you have to give something away to get something back. So if we're selling them the pre-match talk, what do they have to give up? Sorry?
Cooperation.
Yes, they have to give up something to buy into it. So that's what the whole term buy comes from. It means giving something in relation to receiving something. Now, it all works for you in a positive way if you focus on giving. Give, give, give. The more you give, the more you receive back. Who's heard that? We use it in sales term. If you go into a store to buy a dirty great big plasma television worth $2,500, and the salesperson who comes up to you has got dollar signs written on his forehead because he can see you only as his next commission transaction, what's the likelihood you're going to purchase from him? Because all he's worried about is what you can give him. So when you're selling this decision to the front row and to the halfbacks, what are you giving them?
Benefits,
What are the benefits?
positive outcomes.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, it goes even deeper.
Examples,
Examples of,
how you're doing everything.
yeah. And what's
Yeah.
happening to them as you're describing to them how you're going to set the scrums. What's happening to them?
They're getting on the same wavelength as you are buying into what you're
Yeah,
asking them.
it goes further than that. There we go. They're starting to buy into you as the expert because you know what you're talking about. I'm going to call crouch. I'm going to wait until you stop moving before I call bind. When you bind, you're going to bind on his side or his back. Tight head, you're not going to bind under his armpit and you're not going to crank on his arm. You're going to stay gapped. If need be, pop your head on the shoulder so that you stay disengaged. And once you're all steady and square, I'm going to call set. Halfback. If I'm standing behind you, I'm going to give you a tap. That's when you can feed the ball down the middle. That's me the ball. Hold the ball in two hands. Nice, credible feed. What are we doing when we tell them this is what we want? We're setting ourselves up as the expert. They now trust us to back the process. So they're giving up some trust. In return, they're getting you, the expert. That's where we come from, this whole buy and sell exchange process.
Product knowledge.
Yes,
Selling them the tools.
absolutely. And what else? So they're starting to build a rapport, we're starting to build credibility, we're starting to become the expert. But we can take it a little step further. Who did I watch a couple of? Sorry, they're going to finger you out. Who's had times where halfbacks take quick tap penalties behind them? Yeah, behind the referee. And what do you do when the halfback takes that quick tap penalty behind you? And you bring them back. So there are opportunities where you can say to the halfback, this is how it's going to be done. So captains, who has captains come up to them when you award a penalty against them, trying to question you? It doesn't happen to me either.
No.
Why do you think it doesn't happen to Grant or I?
Tell them at the start.
Because we tell them. One of the tricks that I do with captains is I introduce myself and we're on a first name basis.
Yep.
Yeah, mate, I'm Pat. Brett and I can now talk to each other on a first name basis. Nobody else can use my first name. What have I done to Brett in the eyes of him and his team? I've empowered him to talk to me. I've just elevated him because everybody else, I'm ref. But to the captain, he's Pat. And what does that do to him and I in terms of our relationship? It sets us apart. So we've now developed an opportunity where the communication lines are now open to each other and we can now talk to each other. When can we talk? I'm going to tell them when we can talk. We can talk any damn time we want, but not at a penalty. If I point to the goalposts, you can wander over and ask me then, Pat, what was that for? 7 black, not rolling away. Or as we jog to the line out because they just kicked the touch. You okay with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
I just got buy-in from the captain. So we now agree that this is how we're going to communicate.
Another way I do it, guys, is when I introduce myself to the coach, I'll always ask them who the captain is, and I write it on my scorecard. Yeah. And then when you go over to the team, because they're normally warming up, you go over there and you ask for, and then you walk in there and you shake his hand, and straight away, wow, he knows who I am, and you eyeball.
And you're going to kick off. So you go, Pat, you ready?
Yeah.
Jim, you ready?
Yeah.
So you've got that. Bang, it's us three before we do the ball off.
Yeah.
And even if there's a lot on your mind, like John said, he's just written the name down. Take a quick check.
Oh,
I've got Pat and John. Boom, put the thing straight together before they kick.
Hey, thanks.
It's easy to forget, eh? So it's great to write it down. It's good.
Here's another opportunity to make sure that the halfbacks don't take quick taps behind you, because you're going to tell them where to stand when defending, when to take quick taps, And again, you turn to the halfback and say, "You happy to take those?" He goes, "Yes." Then all of a sudden, bang, we're never going to have a quick tap penalty taken behind us. In fact, even though you have the talk, it's still going to happen to you. So when you pull them back with a scrum, you look and go, "Mate, I told you." He goes, "Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot." So all of a sudden, you've now got a scrum half who's cocked up, accepting responsibility for his mistake, not going off at you.
I usually, because the halfback usually the one that takes the quick taps, I always say, because they always run to you to take the tap. They always seem to run to the ref when the play's been over there, but they always run to the ref and I always tell them, "Mate, go to where the players, don't come to me if you want a quick tap, don't come to me, go to behind the mark, and then I'm happy, but don't come to me."
So when I talk to the halfback, I say to them,
That's the first time they do it.
get in my peripheral vision and yell out, "Ref, ref, ref." If you and I can make eye contact where you are, I can give you a nod. You can take the tap where you're standing, so long as it's not in front. And that way, they get the opportunity to take the quick tap. The mark is where I say it is. It's right where you're standing. Okay. So just before you blow the whistle, you got the kicker standing beside you. Jump up here for a minute. One more person, I'm going to establish a relationship. You're kicking off all day today. 2 things for you. You make sure you're on behind that line, and they're all behind you. You okay with that? Now, without telling them. And now he thinks, "Oh, this fella's good." But if you do that to your kicker, I guarantee you won't have him take the kick 2 paces across the line, and they will always be behind the kicker. Why? Because I've just given somebody else the role of doing it. Yeah. Okay, first scrum. Now, you know when you talked about, who was the one? Was it you that talked about calling the captains by their first names? Yeah. So one of the things I've been teaching associate referees is go, "Pat, you ready? Paul, you ready? Stopwatch. Start. Blow." Why? Because you don't want to get to this first scrum and then look at your watch and go, "Oh shit." Oh shit. So clearly there's a few people in this room who've done exactly that. You get to the first scrum 8 minutes later and the stopwatch still says 0, 0, 0, 0. So what happens at the first scrum? You make your mark, they bind up. Who here reminds these guys of the chat you had pre-match?
No
one. So just have a quick reminder, gents, remember the standards we set at the pre-match? Get agreement from them there. Get them all looking at you, get them nodding at you. And they'll say, "Yep, yep, yep." Guess what happens at the very first scrum? Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get ball in, ball out. But if it doesn't go ball in, ball out, what have you got up your sleeve?
We talked about this, guys.
It's rocket science, isn't it? It's not rocket science. Didn't we just talk about pre-engage? And all of a sudden, that whole pre-match where you ran through the process of what you were going to do, and as soon as they didn't comply, bang. You're happy because you'll put your mark in the sand. Your referee coach is happy because he's giving you a tick.
Yeah, I think it's important too, that maybe the less experienced referees don't reset the scrum because you think it's the first scrum. Always, if you talked about it before, absolutely don't go back on what you said by not giving feedback. Brett brought it up a couple of weeks ago, Pat, about talking to the tight heads and telling them, "Look, you guys have got to do your job, and the scrum should go all right." And it actually does work. I tried a wee bit of it a couple of weeks ago, and it actually does work.
That scrum session we had last week, who was there? Yeah, how good was that? And I watched the 2 North Harbour guys at Tauranga Sports, and yeah, you can see why their scrum does so well. First line out, I was telling guys, hold the first throw. And we go to the front props and go, "You fellas going to be standing here all day?" And they go, "Yeah, probably till the 60th minute before I get called." So he goes, "Okay, I'm going to make the first mark. You 2 can make the rest. And this is the yardstick that we're going to stand by." And they go, "Yep, cool. There's somebody else now doing a job that I don't have to do."
I do all that pre-match. Introduce myself to the two guys standing on the 5 metre mark. They've all done pre-match, and I have a huge gap. I just don't have the metre gap. I have a huge gap. And at the first line out, I just go back to them. Remember what we spoke about? If it's not your ball, you maintain the gap.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they're only silly free kicks, and then they go to penalty.
Yeah.
So if it's not your ball, you maintain the gap.
Perfect.
One thing I find is a real problem is around about the 60-minute mark.
Yeah, when they get pulled.
When they get pulled and it's been going really well, and then all of a sudden it starts turning to shit. And go, why is this turning shit? We get really good scrums, and then because they've changed it. Yeah, they bring this big fat boys in.
I reckon that's the best time to stop again and go through what Pat said. One more, just stop and say, hey, you're new in here, even in front of the rest. I want you to do this, and say it one more to him, and then he's done.
And you get the opportunity to say, mate, we had perfect scrums till you came out here. And the first of all, they'd set the 10-metre offside line and let them know when the line out is over. The sole purpose of the entire pre-match is to build rapport with key stakeholders whilst establishing your credibility with them. To establish yourself as the expert. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Once you've established yourself as the expert, the next step is to sell your decisions to the stakeholders. Okay, so here's where it gets a bit tricky. So where's our salesman? Where are you? You're one. Who else is selling in here? You're one. What do you sell? Oh, yeah. So for those non-sales people in the room, I want you to put yourself in the seat of when you've gone to buy a vehicle. All right? Who's just bought a vehicle in the last 12 months? Anyone? Right, yeah. Before you went and bought that car, did you know and like the salesperson? No. Did you trust him? Did you want the car that he had? Okay. Well, here's a good thing. So you wanted the car that he had to sell. Did you need it right there and then? No. So in order for that sale to be effective, what did the salesman have to do? No, he didn't, because you already wanted it.
Sell himself.
He had to sell himself. He had to sell the fact that you knew him and liked him. Because regardless of whether or not you understand this at all, whenever you go to buy something, you won't buy anything from anybody unless you know the person, you like him, you trust him, you want what they've got for sale, and then you need it now. This is the big kicker. Coming from a background where I was selling a luxury item, it was $275 an hour. So can you imagine I had to get over this hurdle. They all wanted it, but when I put the price in front of them, a lot of them balked at it. But how did I get them to make it wanted now?
Building a relationship.
Yeah, it all comes down to this. Need it now. So, number one, getting to know you and like you was overcome during your pre-match. Once they started to know you and like you, they're one step closer to buying your decisions. Number two, they came to trust you. That was overcome during the formative stages of the game. Your first line-out where you set the standard. Your first scrum where you reinforced your pre-match and stood by your decision when you free kicked the first team for pre-engage. And in the first 20 minutes when you were accurate and set standards at tackles. So they now know you, like you, and they trust you because you know what you're doing. Numbers 1 and 2, tick, tick. Number 3, want what you've got. What is it that they want from you? Yes. Credibility, fair, honest, trustworthy. A little bastard who knows what he's doing. Now, this is developed and established during those press situations in games. Number 4, when do they want you to stand up? when you rise to the pressure and you make the big call. How do you think Craig Joubert felt when he awarded a penalty to France in the Rugby World Cup final 2011? Remember Woodcock? Came round off. What did he do? He either sealed off or came round. What was the score at the time? 9-8. Where was the penalty? 40 metres out. But he rose to the pressure and had the balls to make the big call. So, now that you've established yourself as the expert, how easy is it to sell the decision? Just easy. Okay, this is where we need to start thinking about what's some of the behaviours of players that's good player behaviour. Who can give me an example of good player behaviour?
Somebody's receptive to your decisions.
No, this is about them and what they're doing. No, this is about them.
Telling their teammates to keep their mouths shut.
No,
Not penalising them.
no, close. What is a good player behaviour feel? No. We're missing the point. We're thinking about referees. What do players do that's good for the game? So when the scrums are working well, that's good player behaviour. When there's a good jackal turnover or holding on penalty, that's good player behaviour. That's the sort of stuff we want to see. Who doesn't know what a jackal is?
I read it in your stuff.
This is the jackal. You see what I'm doing? I've got a good wide stance of feet positioning with my chest right high over the ball. I'm the first person to arrive at the breakdown. I'll get my hands on the ball. I'm the jackal. I wasn't the guy that held on to the ball carrier and put him to the ground, because that was the tackle assist. The jackal's the first guy who gets his hands on the ball. What happens if he doesn't get the ball but survives the clean-up? He gets a penalty. So what's another example of good player behaviour? Is that good player behaviour? A big legal hit?
Yep.
Okay, what if it leads to a turnover? Is that good player behaviour?
Yep.
So if you were a coach coaching a team and you saw this stuff, would you be happy with your players' behaviour?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now that we know what we want to see, what's examples of poor player behaviour? Oh, anybody got any others? If you don't know what good player behaviour looks like, how do you know what you want to change their behaviour to? Think about it. Changing people's behaviour is getting them to stop doing one thing and start doing another. So if you've got kids and you don't want them to play out on the road, do you yell at them, stop playing on the road? Or do you yell at them, go and play in the backyard? Go and play in the. We had sharks off our bloody front doorstep yesterday morning. I'm not going for a swim for another couple of months. Okay, so there'll be plenty of others. That
On side, making sure the 10 metres back.
Entry.
See, now you're starting to think like a referee again.
Yeah, but it's still good behaviour.
Yeah, but it's not, as far as they're concerned, they couldn't give a rat's. A good player behaviour is when the fly half throws a missed pass, it hits the winger's hands into a gap, and he scores. That's the sort of behaviour you want, not the forward pass that puts the guy into the gap.
Holding up the ball.
Yeah. So a good legal maul turnover, because he dominated the hit. He got the ball carrier, he picked him up, he held on to him, and then when he went to ground, he flopped over the top of him and stopped the ball from coming out. That's good player behaviour. So now that you know what good player behaviour is, what's some examples of poor player behaviour? This should be easy because it's just the opposite of what we just talked about. So poor set piece, high numbers of tackle ruck, more penalties. In other words, you've got inaccurate players or making poor decisions. dangerous tackles, early, late, high, no arms, red zone offending. So if you've got this type of behaviour, what do you guys need to do? Change it. You need to change it. So that's why we started with the good behaviour first, so you know what you need to change it back into. What's the opposite of poor set piece? Line ball out. What's the opposite of high numbers of tackle, ruck and walls? Legal turnovers. What's the opposite of dangerous tackles? Dominating hits where turnovers and counter rucks occur. What's the opposite of red zone offending? Tries. Any others? No. All right. What tools do referees have to change poor behaviour? What can we do? In any order. Talk. Good work. Hang on, break it down a bit further. So with discrete word to the player. Who's the next discrete word to?
Captain.
Good. What's the next thing we can do? Good. Next thing we can do? Yeah. 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 So we've got plenty of options before we start belting them with a stick, haven't we? We've got lots of options. 1, 2 carrots, little wee twig, twig's getting bigger, twig's getting bigger. Now it's a piece of 4x2. Now it's a fence post.
I think if you deal with the first two, it may not get down to the fourth or fifth.
Exactly. So, what's your objective? Your objective is to replace the poor behaviour with good behaviour. I'm a big fan of, rather than telling a player what he can't do, tell him what he can. Don't tell your kids to stop doing this. Tell them what they can do. What's the offence for phones going off during a pat raid talk?
Double fine.
Nah, it's push-ups. Just 10. Yeah. Chest the floor. 2, 3, 4, breathe. 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. 8. Right, thank you. So the objective of a change behaviour plan is not to issue a yellow card. Right. The objective of a change behaviour plan is to change players' behaviour. So, step 1, identify the behaviour that needs changing. What are some examples of behaviour that needs changing?
High tackle, late tackle.
Yep.
Not rolling out of the like quick ball zone for return. It's
Prop spring, turning in or going up.
Angling in.
Yeah.
not going through the back,
Yeah.
flying off your feet every time.
So a lot of these things that you're calling out to me are poor player decisions, aren't they?
Yep. Well, if I get a good scrum, early on in the piece, I'll actually verbally compliment them. Good scrum, guys, excellent.
At the next scrum.
Yep.
And that
Absolutely.
scrum that we just had, let's just keep repeating that. Yeah. So identify the behaviour that needs changing.
I think it's important too, when you've identified the behaviour that is changing and they change, the very next time you say, thanks guy, that's really good.
Yeah.
Don't just ask them to do something the very next time and get them on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know who's really good at that? Craig Bear. He is really good. He's quite words to captains. I think we should be recording them and clipping them and using them as our template. Because he's, I like the way he uses the picture that I'm seeing here. Is that your players are inaccurate. Get them to be more accurate. It's just whether or not the captain's intelligent enough to take the message back. Righto, step 2. Once you've figured out that behaviour needs to change, it's time for a little bit of a chat with the captain, which is the Craig Jabir one, the example that I just did. You guys have probably heard this 3 or 4 times from your professionals, so I'm not saying anything different. Heads up, captain, usually done discreetly, under the carpet, behind back door, closed doors. That communication line that we opened up with the captain at the beginning of the pre-match, this is the time to say, mate, the picture I'm seeing here is that every time your players are on the 5-metre line, they're deliberately slowing the ball down. If he's good and we've been working together, he'll give me the nod and say, yes, Pat, I'll take the message away. And then we sit back and wait. And then if you go 6 or 7 minutes without an infringement in that 5-metre zone, thanks for taking that message back. It seems to have worked. Exactly what you said. What's step number 3?
Pull them out, play also pull them out in the middle of the field in front of them.
Yeah. This is your final warning with the captain. When were we at Rangatawa in the pouring rain? Yeah. So about a month ago, I had to referee that game where Ryan got injured. I was talking to Piglet in the change rooms afterwards. Piglet and I had a bit of a run-in.
Why doesn't it surprise?
I should say though that because it's being broadcast live on the internet right now as we speak, Piglet's a good bastard. So we had a bit of a run-in, which we overcame. I spoke to him about the final warning with the captain that I had in that game, and it was, I can't even remember which team it was. But I asked him the question, from where you were standing in the club rooms, did you know what was going on? And his answer was, you were having your final warning with him, the next person was in the bin, which is exactly what I was doing. So what did I manage to achieve?
You communicated what you were doing
You
to somebody who was off.
let everybody see it.
Everybody knew exactly what was going on and had that final warning chat with the captain. Even Piglet, the opposition coach, knew from the grandstands. If you can get that sort of feedback, then you know that what you're doing during the game is working. Because the decision then came 1 minute later when the next penalty for offside came, the guy was in the bin. Everybody knew. Which is what? Step 4. The clear and obvious temporary suspension. We don't want to get there. The object is to get to here and have the heads up chat work. If that doesn't work, the object is to have the final warning, look at me, stop the watch, stop the clock, go into the middle of the field where everybody can see you having a talk with the captain. They all know through their experiences of watching Super Rugby and having commentators say, I bet you he's having a talk about the next one's in the bin. The clear and obvious temporary suspension. Now this plan only works if you get some of the next things right. It has to be clear and obvious to everyone. So the penalties that you used to get to the situation where you had the behaviour, they need to be accurate. That little hands in the ruck penalty that only you saw, most probably wouldn't be able to be used in your escalation process. Why? Because nobody else saw it. Nobody else knows. We had an instance on the weekend with the 2 visiting referees where the second guy had a reasonably high penalty count because he was quite technical. 6 or 7 of his penalties could have been left in the pocket. He knew that the offending player had done something wrong, which was crawl a couple of, or about a metre or so along the ground before stopping moving. But nobody else knew. Not even the player knew. Because when he got up, he had a big, massive, puzzled look on his face. Leave some in the pocket. You know what I mean by saying leaving them in the pocket?
Absolutely.
If they can be left in the pocket, that's the best place for a penalty. Absolutely. Well, some of them don't even need to be blown.
No.
Technically correct.
If you're the only person on the field that knows what happened.
Yeah.
There can be other things that have had no impact on the game whatsoever.
Liable for penalty.
Yeah. Liable for penalty is a great word. And the last one, be prepared to follow your process. All right, if you followed it and it's working for you, then there is nothing wrong in going to the next step. Everybody knows. You made the comment before, if you don't go the next step, you actually look like an ass. Because you told everybody you were going to do this, 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 and this. And when the pressure was on, you went this, this, this. Oh, I don't want to do that bit.
What sort of a gap? So you've spoken to the captain, everything's sweet.
Yep.
And
And you go 7 minutes without
or
an
even
infringement.
longer. Well, what sort of, what are you
Yeah.
thinking?
Well,
And then you've got a clear and obvious thing.
well, hang on a minute. Think about it for a moment. What was the object of the change behaviour process? You wanted them to change their behaviour.
Yeah.
Is 9 minutes long enough? Is 12 minutes long enough? If you have a look at the context of the game, if you're having a penalty, you know, you've got a string of penalties the first 7 minutes, and then you go, and then you have your chat, and you go 12 minutes without a penalty. Isn't that exactly what you wanted? So,
It's a tough one though, because you sort of haven't really followed the process. If you've given a final, I suppose it's the
wording.
it's the way you worded it.
yeah.
If you remember Bryce, I mean, I don't know how many times Bryce has said to us, be careful, you don't back yourself into a corner with nowhere else to
So the
go.
next one is liable to get a card,
Yeah.
not the next one is going to get yellow.
Yeah. Or I might have to.
But you can always say that, mate, this is the 5th penalty for your pillar offside. I'll tell you now, the next pillar offside is in the bin.
So you know, you're selling product. You're selling all the features.
Yeah,
They've got to see the benefits.
the benefits.
So you sell all the
Absolutely.
features and that,
Yeah.
no benefits to you. So.
Right. So, did you guys learn how to make a great first impression?
Yep.
Build rapport and credibility.
Yep.
Establish setting yourself as the expert.
Yep.
Change behaviors. And you should have a 4-step plan now, right? Yep. Okay, so we don't have a 25 penalty count blowout because you now can notice it. And you won't come off the field having like you've missed your opportunity because you now got a method of tracking it. You don't have to deal with poor captains anymore because you've created a way of setting some relationships with them. Where do we go from here? What happens now?
Great game.
Yeah. Now you guys have got to write that into your own words. Create your own behavioural plan that best suits your personality and method. One man, you know, there's 27 different thousand ways of skinning a cat. Find the way that works for you. And the other thing you have to do is share this on social media so we can get it out to those who aren't here. Right? Any questions before I sit down?
Going back, what if you end up with a captain and a coach from the previous game that you ended up getting off with? I know they didn't like you from the previous game and started to build that whole relationship with you. I mean, they could come in with an attitude from the start.
You start with a clean slate. You can't control what they're starting with, but you can control what you're starting with.
Many good example would be that with the attitude at the beginning of the season was very, very anti towards them, and now it's actually changed.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think because,
See the
yeah, it's just changed both ways, really. They sort of cleaned up, and then the first game I had, and they were shut up there. And then the second game, actually, it was there, it was real good from the second game, even the coach, he come up and then we had a quick check before the game, and so I hadn't even been there, so it was going to be.
You'll probably find though that there's a little bit on both sides have
Yeah.
changed. So you can give yourself a pat on the back for that.
What about if you felt you've done everything right, you followed your steps, and as you said, you come up with a captain that's
Oh, isn't that tough? Who here's had to sack a captain?
I had that on Saturday. Teddy first 15 captain, young loudmouth joker. Every decision he just wanted to quit. Half time he came up to me and he said, "How do I talk to you?" He said, and I said, "It's only a privilege, not a right." And his coach actually heard him and took him off as captain, and I had a young guy, Tom, in the second half, a totally different captain altogether.
Changes the game, mate. Changes the game.
does.
And it makes the game really enjoyable.
The two words that I use are time and tone. There's a right time to talk to me, and there's a wrong time. And pretty much with the captain, the only time we can't talk to me is at a penalty against him. So, you know, there's lots of opportunities for the captain to talk to me.
You're right.
But there's only one tone that you can come in.
Just on that, Pat, it's a really good point, and it should be two ways, because if
Yes.
we as referees want him to come in a nice tone, but we're treating him like, get your guys out of there, and you're yelling at guys and you escalate it, well, it's only going to come back. So a calm tone actually goes a long way from our part.
Get a big fat ass and get in there.
That's perfect. That is perfect. And honest. That's what you want. Honesty and credibility.
Hey, I've got 5 kids, so I know how to treat them.
So you speak to the captain the way in which you want to be spoken to. I have a massive bark, as some of you who've watched me referee have already witnessed. I have an awesome bark when I want 7 black to roll. But when I want to massage everybody else, it's a conversational tone. So, you know, bark, conversation. Bark, conversation. If you're barking all the time, it becomes white noise.
Inside and outside the books.
Yeah. Angry wife. Nice. All right, so that's me done and dusted. If you've got no further questions, I will turn this off.